All right, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order at 7:31.
All right. We'll make that 6:31.
All right. Do we need to do an audio check for everybody?
Best.
Check 1, 2. And then for roll call, Lamar, right now it's just Rocco, Mike, and you for commissioners.
Lisa is on her way. She'll be here any minute. So we have a quorum, so I thought we should go ahead and get started. And I assume that Austin is joining our meeting. Is that correct, as far as you know, Nate?
No, I was assuming that, which is why I put him on first, but he advised that he will not be at this meeting. So if you want to rearrange the schedule a little bit for our other guests, that'd be fine with me.
Okay. I don't see Jesse yet.
Jesse's here in the room. And,
All right.
Chelsea Rooney is on Zoom.
Okay. All right. Again, Lisa will join us any minute, but let me find out if there are any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda. Other than we probably want to let Jesse go first and move that up since Austin's not here. Is that something we need to vote on? That would be my motion.
Sounds good to me.
Do you want
Have
to
a
just,
second with
oh,
Mike?
sorry, do you want to just switch old business and new business around, or however you want?
Yes, please. Yes, just reverse those.
So Lamar and Esh just arrived,
I see her and
and I move to approve the agenda with the correction of moving new business in the place of old business.
okay. And I believe Mike's, are you seconding that?
I second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, motion passes. It's time for public comment. Do we have anyone on Zoom or in the room who wants to do public comment? And Nate, I don't know if you have me up on the screen, but please do so that people can see.
Okay, will do. We have Liz and Eagle's Nest online. Anyone have any public comment at this time?
Can I make a comment as a commissioner, or would that be inappropriate?
On what topic would you like to make a comment, Ann?
Well, it's a statement of my concern.
On what topic?
Well, I'll read it. It has come to my attention that I'm not receiving emails that are sent to all other commissioners from Chairman Matthews. These emails are blind copies, I believe, as are permitted so as to avoid violating the open meeting law. By not being included in these discussions, I'm apparently coming to these meetings of the full commission as the quote odd man out. I would think that this might violate the spirit of working as a team for the good of all of our town. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. So are there any other public comments? Okay, let's go on with new business.
Yes, Mayor Dixon has a comment.
Okay, Mayor?
Yeah, I was kind of glancing over the some of the updated language for your land use, and I would encourage you to look over your minor definitions really carefully as far as minor site plans, because the way it looked to me, it looked like everything would be going into town staff that we typically do here in town. So yeah, just kind of keep that in mind when you're looking that over.
Say that again, Todd. Everything would be going.
Well, for example, I think it says
I didn't. hear.
anything under, like 25 residential homes would go to the town staff. Yeah, just make sure you go over your minor site plan definitions and you agree with them.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Do you have page numbers for us to look at?
No.
Are
No
you,
worries. No
are
worries.
you concerned that that's too much work for the staff?
I would, but what ran through my mind initially is what would the planning commission do? If everything that's listed there would be going through staff.
Oh,
I've got an old file that I used to keep and laying, like 30 to 40% were decks and another percentage was fences and another percentage is architectural reviews. But this is where you basically are defining what the staff would have the authority to make a decision on versus yourselves having the authority to make this decision on it. So yeah, just when you get to that section, just make sure you agree with it.
okay.
Thank you, Todd. That's helpful. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think especially in light of the fact that we don't have full-time staff at this point in time to do it. And it's unclear, we'll be discussing that further tonight about what staff is even available to do it or will be available to do it. So it's a point well taken, Todd. Thank you. So let's move on. I believe we're ready for new business and Jesse's presentation.
The approval of minutes.
Approval of minutes. Sorry about that. Public comment, approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes of October 11th with no changes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Now we're ready for Jesse's presentation. Under new business. Will Jesse have a mic so I can hear him?
Yes, I just got one. Jesse Stroop, 10770 Florence Avenue. And I wanted to report tonight on the architectural survey that the Planning Commission approved earlier this year. The survey findings are not fully complete yet, but as you're going into finalizing the land use code, I wanted you to at least be able to see some of the work that was being done within the survey. So I'll speak a little bit on a high level about this, and then we have Chelsea Rooney is also on Zoom, and she's part of Anderson Hollis, who's been doing the survey. So they came to Green Mountain Falls, looked at every property, noted the architectural style and any kind of additional improvements or things that would make that property at risk. All of this sort of in vein of trying to quantify what makes Green Mountain Falls cute and quaint. As we talked about in the comprehensive plan that we wanted to keep it that way, we started to think, how do we measure it? So looking at the architecture's really what we came up with. So you see the groupings there: mid-century rustic, late Victorian, and other. And then this is an overlay map of actual properties. So in the end, we will turn over this study, which will be a huge database of all the properties in town. And if the Planning Commission has a question about a property, they could pull it up, or town staff, to get that information. Can you pull the next slide? So I think this surprised me a bit that only 2.3% of the survey properties were late Victorian. I expected it to be more. 7.5 were mid-century rustic, and 28.6 were rustic. And then what Anderson Hollis has done is gone through and given an integrity grade to each property so that we know how important it might be to protect the architectural feature at that property. And the next slide.
How are you defining integrity there?
Chelsea, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, sure. So integrity there are a lot of pieces to that, but basically from our visual review and a little bit of our historic background research that we've done, looking at the property, any kind of additions that have been done, any changes, alterations that have been made to those structures, that changes being window alterations or roof alterations, any kind of siding material changes, those kinds of changes impact the integrity that we see as a preservation integrity. So those are some of the factors that go into it. But also, again, just kind of looping in some of the historical data that we're also developing at the same time is a factor.
So high integrity, very high integrity would be the way they were built without any
Yes.
modification over the years.
Right. And again, just a caveat that it's only from what we could see from the street. So from the exterior, we can't get up and really touch and feel all the materials. So we can't verify exactly if things are original, but just from our quick walk by on the street view of the houses.
Okay, thank you.
So just one more question on that, Chelsea. So when we say high integrity, you're not saying that it is in great condition or that it's well built. The integrity applies to the historic nature of the original materials. And
Yes, that's correct.
that is entirely what you're just referring to there, correct?
Yes. In this terms, yes.
And I have a question also. So on that previous slide, Jesse, not all the buildings are accounted for, or whatever your very first slide, and your totals don't equal 100%, 728 or something. Does that mean you just haven't processed all those other buildings into the map?
Yeah. So what we've done here is we've actually taken the I don't want to say the top 3 styles, but the 3 styles that are really representative of the development of Green Mountain Falls during that time period. So mid-century rustic, and late Victorian are what we see as the most predominant styles related to the development of the town. So the others that we haven't specifically called out in this map is only because they don't have high integrity. So that's why they're not colored at all.
Okay, so those are homes that you did. I mean, you looked at the buildings, so all those,
Yes.
even though they're not classified as other.
Yeah, so they're all cataloged. We have a big database, like Jesse said, that we'll share. So we looked at all the properties. This particular map just doesn't show that information. And in our final report, we will have many different iterations of these maps showing different characteristics.
So you have the addresses, is that right? It's listed somewhere.
It is listed by the address and the parcel number, which will be in the database.
Okay.
And again, we'll turn the entire study over to town staff so that it's available here. Honestly, we went in with the intention of trying to quantify some of these styles and put names to what we're seeing. What Historic Green Mountain Falls Foundation will probably plan to do would be to educate people who have homes that are of high integrity based on the study. Not to say that all homes aren't, but to educate and to recognize and to promote. I'm sure you all know, like Greenbox has the walking tour right now. So the ability to be able to add historical homes to that in the future is something that might come out of this. But I think just creating awareness and calling out the historical nature of some of those homes. Chelsea, do you want to talk about what you'll be doing to finish out the rest of the plan?
Yeah, sure. So right now we're at the process where we've gotten all of our historic background kind of compiled. We're delving into more of the analysis and creating those recommendations. One of which Jesse mentioned is just education. So we're compiling all of this information, all this data that we've gathered and historic research that we've done into what we're calling a preservation plan. So it'll be, you know, a full document printed that we will give to Historic Green Mountain Falls Foundation, which they'll share with you to hopefully use those recommendations in the future to help guide any kind of preservation initiatives in the town.
Any other questions that we can answer?
So Jesse, as you know, we've been working on the land use code, and there is a provision for historic overlay. And I assume that we'll be able to use this as a tool with that process. We're trying to make it a situation, or the commissioners have stated that they would like to have it be something that is voluntary for citizens who may have a property that falls into these categories, to potentially participate in being a part of this historic area or historic overlay, because obviously they're confined to one particular area. Is there anything that doesn't, that we're planning that you feel like we could benefit by knowing about this as we're in the last stages of getting this done? Is there anything that we're overlooking, or any comments that you have to make regarding how we're handling this?
I'm going to say that when I saw the proposed historical overlays, I wanted to sort of just rush this to you so that it could be potentially used as a tool. I don't think historic preservation, I certainly don't have any, I can't tell you how to use the tool. It's a tool, it's some great information about every property in town. Seems relevant to the land use code, and it certainly would seem relevant to your historical overlays and your districting.
Jesse,
Because you can see there's not really a district. It's pretty random.
what's the purpose of this study?
Again, the purpose of the study was sort of to quantify what is quaint, what is charming, what is it that people said in the comprehensive plan that was important for them to keep about the nature of the town.
Is it the intent to tell a homeowner that they can't change their property if it's historical, falls into one of these high categories?
I mean, my gut feeling says no. I think, I don't think anybody wants to get in the business of doing that, but you may be able to encourage someone who doesn't know what they're buying or doesn't know what they have, by acknowledging that they have a home that we consider of a very high integrity and would like it to stay the same.
We have a 109-year-old cabin. We just put a metal roof on it, and that's mainly fire protection. Is that going to reduce the integrity if you've got a metal roof instead of the one that was on there in the origin?
I'm going to guess the answer is probably yes, but I'm going to let Chelsea answer that question because that's outside of my.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, it does lower your integrity. But if there are certain materials that are acceptable for alterations, and standing seam or some sort of metal roof is certainly one that falls into an acceptable material. Again, this is all for use as the town wants to see it. So I wouldn't take it personally if your integrity goes down because you did something to better your property either.
Great,
That makes
thank you.
sense.
How many
I'll
years
see.
back do you go to be historic?
Can you
Typically
answer that question,
anything-
Chelsea?
Technically, anything over 50 years is considered historic.
So if the cabin, this is personal,
Oh,
was built in 1914 and added on to in 1950 with those materials, that would be historic. Twice.
Yes, technically, yes.
Well, and although we don't have them here tonight, I think it's interesting. It was interesting for me to pull up my property, which is in the low integrity NA. But then we also have some new homes here who structurally, mimic rustic or Victorian. And so, Chelsea, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so that's tricky again, because we don't have exact construction dates. Sometimes just viewing it from the street, if it was a very well done new construction that has period appropriate materials and scale, then we might have thought it was historic, or knowing that it was new, still saying that it has high integrity because it was constructed in a way that it blends with the surrounding buildings, and it was done again with those materials and scale proportion that are all complementary to the existing landscape and surrounding buildings.
So I'm just wondering, since we're drafting our new land use code, if we do have a section in there that talks about a historic preservation overlay, I was wondering if we could get Chelsea's input on what's currently drafted and see if she has any recommendations. Is that something that would be within the scope of what she's hired for, Jesse?
I'm going to go on a limb and say yes, and I will verify that tomorrow, but I think we could absolutely make that part of the scope. I think it's important this is a tool that you didn't ask for. So we should help you come up with ways to make it be more helpful. I think historic has its own plans for the survey to do some encouraging and to do some acknowledging of, but if in the land use code, you're thinking about shapes of structures, materials, how does that work with fire mitigation? I think it's a good conversation to continue.
I have another question too. I was just wondering if, for instance, some of the properties that look historic only look that way on the outside, right? Well, in our code that we're considering too, we have a whole section in there about federal and all these qualifications. Do we have to have all that in our code? Is this a way to get grants? What is the aim for individuals?
So you're talking about like National Historic Preservation
Yeah, all
guidelines.
those- Get them
And the-
designated.
And I think the answer is no.
You don't have to.
I know that's not something that historic wants to get into or that I want to get into,
Mm-hmm.
and we heard from the earlier Board of Trustees the same. This is more celebrating what we have
Just
as a town
keeping
and
it-
protecting it within the Planning Commission and the Board of Trustees.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Chelsea, when you finish this project, and thank you and Jesse for being open to helping us as you've been asked tonight to do. But I'm wondering at the end of this, will you have maybe a list of materials, like you said, the metal roof is something that you can add, just so that people understand how to keep their integrity score as high as possible. And of course, be within fire mitigation standards as well. Would that be something y'all would be providing?
So there's a fine line between a preservation plan that we're providing and where this conversation is kind of leading is towards design guidelines. where design guidelines are really put together to discuss exactly that: materials, size, scale, very intricate details about windows for this kind of historic overlay, I think, that we're talking about. So we'll touch on those things from the preservation plan perspective of just an overall recommendation that the next step could potentially be these guidelines if that's the way the town chooses to go. But we probably won't touch very specifically on metal roof versus wood siding versus stone veneer and those kind of specifics.
Well, I do think as a part of the education process, it would help citizens, and that may be part of what Historic Foundation is planning to do, is to help educate people about what they do have and what they could have, or what would detract from it and all that. I don't know, Jesse, is that something thinking in that direction?
Excuse me. I think if that's something that we were asked to include in the architectural study or asked to pull from them at a later time, we could certainly do that.
Is that what you were thinking, Rocco, when you were talking about that earlier?
So Lamar, I know when we talk about the downtown village overlay, it gets very specific into materials. However, the historic preservation does not. And none of us have the expertise to recommend those kinds of things. And if we want to keep it generic, great. I just saw this as a potential opportunity to maybe refine the historic preservation overlay while we're working on it.
Well, I agree. And in that same way that I just described. So Jesse, I think that would be helpful to head in that direction.
We are meeting with Anderson Hall. We're meeting with the architectural firm later this week. And so we can definitely steer the conversation in that direction if there's interest from this group.
Is that something, commissioners, we need to vote on?
I don't know if we need to vote, but we can definitely have a discussion. I'm in favor of maybe having a little more detail or specifics, or especially, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the land use code, but to help educate the landowners on how to keep their special historic property special. That would be helpful at whatever level, whether it's in the code or not.
I would agree, as long as we're not going to prescribe for people how they have to maintain their property. I mean, I think if you own property and you don't want it to continue as a historic property, you ought to have the right to do that. But as long as we're not prescribing something that is binding on a homeowner, I'm okay with.
That's something that consistently as a commission, we've all agreed that we do not want to do. But I do think education and just information is helpful. And if we're going to have a historic overlay, it would be helpful for people to understand, we've got the addresses and they can look their house up and see if it qualifies and where it is on the integrity scale. But to leave it a mystery as to why or what they can do to enhance it or detract from it, I think is sort of a waste of all the work that's been done. So I think it's helpful to provide that. Lisa, your thoughts?
Did you just say, Lisa? And I was going to say something that it could be as a reference or a resource attached to the land use code for current information. The information is going to change over time, obviously, but it could be also, like an addendum or an amendment or something. We could talk to Austin, but just as a reference attached to or something.
Okay. It may be helpful for people to understand what qualifies as being in the historic overlay. I do think we need to have some basic information like that. in the land use code, just so people understand, even if it's just this work is attached with the addresses. And comments?
No, thank you.
I think we have a consensus, Jesse, that we would like to move forward with whatever help y'all can provide to help educate citizens, and we'll figure out how to incorporate that as we're working on our code.
Great. Well, I appreciate the time tonight. I think is a good check-in point as we go to complete the study, that we have a little bit more direction on final results. So thank you.
Jesse, we appreciate you coming and doing this. It certainly helps us understand a whole lot more about this historic overlay that was prescribed by the comprehensive plan. And this helps flesh it out for us a lot better than we have.
Thank you, Jesse.
Okay, are we ready to move on to our old business, which is the land use code rewrite? Nate, I can share my screen, or
Technically, new best business includes the staffing conversation.
okay. I'd rather, yeah. Well, I guess it's under that, so we can move forward with that. I guess to start that discussion, kick that off, Rocco has been involved in planning commission much longer than any of the rest of us, and he was on the planning commission when there were no paid staff, no planners, and so I think he has a reference point that he can share with the rest of us regarding town staffing for planning. Rocco, if you want to talk about that.
Sure, happy to, Lamar. So I came on the planning commission in 2017 for 3 years. That was before we had Julia Simmons, who was our first part-time town planner. And really by necessity, our chair, Dick Bratton, stepped up and would be in charge of producing the agendas. At the time, the town clerk would host the agenda, make sure our timelines were met and everything. But a lot of coming up with the agenda inputs was by the chair. And then if we had an applicant, a lot of the research was done by each individual commissioner. And so instead of having a staff memo kind of leading us and directing us where to find things in the code, we had cheat sheets and things where we would just know if someone was looking for a fence or a deck or a shed, we could go to the correct section of the code, do the research ourselves, and then make a determination based on that without the expense and the time of a staff report. Fast forward to now, and I know, Lamar, you were asked for budget inputs from the Planning Commission last week, which was after we last met as a planning commission. And I mentioned to you that I question the need for a town staff planner. One of the factors is, Nate has stepped into that role using his experience. However, that does take time away from the town clerk and treasurer duties. I think offsetting that, though, is we've gone from, what's the current code? How many pages? 120 to about half that right now in the draft. And to be honest, some previous commissioners didn't understand the code very well. But I think we will be the most studied commissioners in recent history going through this rewrite. So based on that we'll have the hands-on, we'll have had the question and answer with the attorney. What does this mean? How does this actually work? In the sake of saving resources for higher priority needs for the town, based on what I know, I think that we can all pull together and do the brunt of the work ourselves as commissioners. We will need staff assistance when it comes to posting agendas and assembling different packages. But I think any of the commissioners would be willing to come in and assist as needed instead of you just putting it all together, Nate. And so I think if we have that kind of working relationship, I think the town has higher priority needs in the budget than a town staff planner.
Could I say something too? I would.
Yes, Ann, go ahead.
Well, I was going to tell what Rocco was saying. I remember those days too. And I also remember the days when the planning commission met and actually went to the site of someone's house where they were going to be doing something, which I thought was very, very helpful. They would all get in one car and go drive and go walk around with the owner and say, oh yeah, that, and that. So you could see what they were doing. I never understood why that was discontinued. I thought that was a very good collegial effort, and it kind of helped the town to understand everything also.
It's a good point, but we were told it could potentially violate open meeting laws by having more than 2 commissioners go out at a time. Dick Bratton and I did go to a property where there was a carport that was not approved. He and I went out, just the 2 of us as commissioners. It didn't violate open meeting. We did not talk to the property owner, but we made some measurements and we reported back to the planning commission. However, nothing prevents an individual commissioner from going to a property on an individual basis.
I understand that, but I wonder if we could ask the lawyer if there isn't a way that we could revive that. Because that
Well-
informs the whole commission, and it's not exactly secret, you know. I mean, it's on the agenda. Anybody can join in if they want to walk along too. That's
Well,
all.
I think that Open Meetings Act would have a problem with having a meeting off-site that would be difficult possibly for townspeople to attend. However, there's certainly nothing wrong with 1 or 2. And I think if we're going to do something like this and make a recommendation like this to the Board of Trustees, that this commission needs to be aware and willing to, you know, as needed, 1 or 2 of us go actually and look at the site and bring back a recommendation to the rest of the commissioners.
Is that publicly known that those 2 commissioners are going to go do that?
Well, of course, that would
I
be,
mean, is it posted on the
it would be-
website or something?
well, it
No,
would be,
it wouldn't be a meeting at that point. It would just be 2 people, as Rocco described.
Oh,
but it would be publicly known when they brought the report to the commission to make the recommendations. It's similar to what we've already been doing with Nate, because he's working directly with homeowners. He's directly going to the site and checking things out. I mean, that would be part of our responsibilities. And that's the discussion that we want to have tonight. Is that something that the commissioners are ready, willing, and able to do? And therefore, is that a recommendation we would want to make to BOT? And a third part of that is what Todd mentioned tonight, which is really important, is we need to be sure that our code is written such that the planning commission can make these decisions and it's not dependent on staff, because we likely may or may not have staff to even do any of it. So we don't want to write it and be entirely dependent on staff.
I guess I was just trying to help revive the good old days, you know, when we just kind
Well,
of got
unfortunately-
together and it was great before
Unfortunately-
all the darn rules.
Unfortunately, the attorneys don't like the good old days. Mike, what are your thoughts?
Well, I thought in an earlier draft that we had delegated fences and outbuildings and decks and so forth to the staff. The planning commission was going to spend its time on new structures and more complicated issues, but a simple deck or a fence or something, why in the world does this commission have to deal with that? It's pretty plain, unless Nate is telling us he doesn't have time or doesn't want to do it. But I thought we were designing those the document that we've been working on for so long to delegate a lot of the easy stuff. And we would be in an approval position, but staff could go ahead and approve it if it's something simple and direct, straightforward. Look at the
That-
code and decide.
You're right, Mike. That was something that was discussed, and we've kind of been back and forth about what is going to be the role of planning commission and what do we want to do? And so that's part of this conversation tonight. But if we don't have staff and we have other priorities for money, I mean, we'd all like to see our roads fixed. There's a lot of things in town that aren't happening. And if we can pitch in as volunteers and contribute in a way that helps the town not have to spend needlessly, I think that is something that Rocco's bringing forward with his own experience to suggest that we consider.
Well, I'm very much in favor of not hiring more staff. And if that means the commission has to do a little more, then I'd be more than willing to do it. But I just thought on the simpler things, it just makes sense to delegate that to somebody that can take a look at the code and decide and report to us what he's done or she.
Now, one thing we need to look at tonight, as Todd has pointed out, is basically the entire code would be done by staff and nothing would be done by commissioners. So that's certainly not
That'd
what.
be a good idea.
So that's
Few extra hours later.
look at. But Lisa, your thoughts?
I think I agree that we were trying to simplify this. We may need to classify the exact type of application that staff would approve, rather than just whatever is quote unquote simple. I don't know. Make it more definitive, I guess, if that's what we're going to do.
Well, and to address one other thing that Mike said, I think we probably need to let Nate speak for himself, but it's my understanding that he is wanting to move out of the, take himself out of the planning role. Nate, maybe I'm misunderstanding that. Maybe you can clarify for us.
Yeah, it's Becky and I's goal to refocus, because right now we pay a accountant essentially to help with some of the audit things we've gone through, and he's really been the only consistent person here doing the books for I don't know how long, a year and a half or so. So he's been extremely helpful in the transition of the administrations, but our goal is to phase him out so that I can take over fully all the treasurer duties and then refocus, the money that's being spent on him right now into the planning. So basically then we only have one phase or one area of administration that we're using either part-time or contract labor for. So consolidating all the financial stuff into the clerk treasurer role as it should be, and then phasing myself out of the planning duties. And so the three options that have been discussed to this point, a little bit, I don't know, a little bit with the board, I think, but the idea of the Vista Volunteer, which is a kind of a grant, I probably will say this wrong, but sort of a grant funded position that could work on simpler applications as well as other community development. That would be a full-time person at an extremely discounted rate. Probably similar to get a full-time person in that role for as much or less than what we've been paying Brian for his assistance in the financial area. The other idea is just to keep posting the part-time planner in the hopes that we get someone in a situation that's experienced and would like to take on that role. Always possible, not very likely, perhaps, but, and then the other kind of hybrid version of that, or the other third option would be a, full-on contract planner that is a professional certified planner that would handle most, if not all, of the applications, or supplement that Vista person if that comes to fruition. Contract planner could supplement that person on some of the more complicated development plans.
What's the,
And the fees could be looked at again by the board to try to cover, that contract planner expense.
what's the estimated budget impact of each of those three options?
I don't really know exactly, but I can say the Vista volunteer that has been budgeted for like 15 or 20,000 for a full-time person for the year, basically. That's probably about what a part-time planner would get. The professional contract planner, they're of course going to be more expensive per hour, but they would likely be much more efficient because they have the experience to be. So then it's just a matter, I don't really know at this point. I don't have an hours estimate or a total types of applications per year estimate at this point, but that's something that we're working on.
Thank you.
I don't know how much you'd have to be a bookkeeper and all that, but I will say that I think it's probably easier and cheaper to hire a bookkeeper than it is to hire a planner. And you do such a good job. I'm confused about why that would be a goal, because it doesn't seem to be the best use of your skills from what I know. But that's not part of my purview. Do you know the hourly rate for a contract planner?
I want to say about 125.
So as
sorry, one other comment just on the idea of planning commissioners fulfilling that role. The most important part of dealing with applications in the public is just consistency and treating everyone the same way, even though I may not know all the answers for a particular application type. I don't know. I think it's important to have that at least, if not only perception, but also the actuality of planning commissioners fulfilling that role, and in relation to how that commission or group is viewed by the community is very important versus, having a quote unquote professional, a staff person who's essentially taken an oath to, do that, could be quite a bit of a difference in perception there. Also, planning commission turns over. So I don't know if it's the best long-term strategy for the town.
If I can just interject, one thing that's been lacking in town hall is consistency. In 6 years, we've had 6 different town managers, and I think we've had 4 town clerk treasurers. So I think if anything, a 3-year planning commission assignment is more consistent than the track record of this town hall.
Well, as we sit tonight, we have a very uncertain future with a staff solution. We've been advertising for a part-time planner. I've lost track. It's at least 6 months, maybe 8-9 months.
It hasn't been posted for a while.
But it's been posted off and on for a long period. and with no takers. The Vista Volunteer is a fun idea. If it's grant funded, the grant will run out. And so then, we've got costs there. And I don't know that much about Vista Volunteers, but I would assume that they're not particularly well trained. They're kind of learning on the job. Is that a misperception?
I think that's accurate.
Could I interject?
Well, I'm in the middle of a thought, so let me just finish. And yes, the third idea that was put forward was the contract planner, which we've done in the past. I believe Julia was contract. I could be wrong about that, but we could look back at what we were spending on her. Do you happen to know that, Nate?
No, she was much lower cost than that. She was essentially doing what I was doing before becoming full-time in the clerk treasurer role. She was here on site most of the time, and she worked remotely. Sure, during COVID and all that, but it was more of a lower cost on-site contract staff, similar to what Brian is now and what I was before becoming full-time.
Well, just the point I'm trying to make here is we don't have a clear solution for staff at this point in time. We don't have a clear path. We don't have, with the Vista Volunteer, we would not have a professional. So I just, again, want to caution the commissioners that we are trying to create something that can be a code that's overarching regardless of what the circumstances are. And so I think we need to be really careful about depending upon staff as we write code, bottom line. Anne, what was your comment?
I was just wondering, you mentioned the Vista Volunteer. It used to be that the Vista Volunteer was paid by the government. Maybe that's changed, but I was approached many years ago. They were going to pay me $1,200 to run the court watch, which I was already doing as a volunteer. And I didn't need the money, so I suggested somebody else. But I don't know if those it's volunteers in service to America. That's what it means.
Right, and as we just discussed a minute ago, they're not trained professionals at all in the planning industry. So they might know less than any of the rest of us. Do you, at this point, Rocco, do you want to make any kind of a motion as far as a recommendation? Do you feel like this needs to be discussed further? The other commissioner wants to make a motion?
For what?
Well, it's difficult to know what has been proposed in the 2023 budget for a town staff planner. And I think that just underscores communication. So we need more communication with town staff to know when a part-time planner job is being posted for our situational awareness, know what that job description looks like. I'm sure we can find it out there, but it would be helpful to me personally as a commissioner to understand the vision from town hall. And so I think we got some insights tonight from Nate about what the town staff was thinking for goals. But I don't have a clear picture of what is included in the 2023 budget for a planning person. Do you have insights into that, Nate?
Not exactly at this time.
Okay, because last meeting we did ask if it was budgeted. We were told it was, but we don't have details. I think that level of detail would be necessary for us to make a educated recommendation to the trustees whether or not the town can afford that position, because we don't even know what is projected in the budget for that position. So I think that's an overarching question that needs to be addressed for us to make a recommendation. And I know you gave your initial recommendation to the trustees last Tuesday, and you had said at least one commissioner was against the idea of a paid staff planner. I still am against that idea. I don't know what that would save the town, but I will move that we recommend that the trustees do not include in the budget money for a paid staff planner.
I'll second that.
Discussion?
I don't think we're in a position to make a recommendation yet, frankly.
Well, the staff planner would be supporting this committee. And we're making a recommendation. We're not making a decision. I don't see why we shouldn't make a recommendation that affects this committee.
We're making a recommendation that we don't need one,
I would agree with that.
but I'm not so sure that's true with all the regulations the government has. That's pretty tough work. We're just new, just us.
Nate, what percentage of your time do you think this job takes up?
It's very seasonal and dependent on the type of application received. So like a fence or a shed permit, maybe, you know, because those are the same over and over. So, you know, maybe those are, I don't know, an hour or two. But for instance, I've got a pretty complicated Colorado Springs utilities application that'll be coming before you pretty soon. And that, you know, includes, you know, 4 variances and a bunch of research and a bunch of staff time on that. So it's hard to put a blanket percentage, but I don't know, at this time, fifth of my time or something like that, I would say.
Well, I'm concerned. I mean, human tendency is if you hire somebody to do something, they will try to make a job of it, and to justify their job, they sometimes take you through a whole lot more detail and a lot of extra effort than it's worth. And so I'm very much against a permanent staff member. I don't know if the contract planner, if we really need expertise and you're not going to have the time, I think I'd prefer that than hiring a staff member and paying the benefits and everything else.
I should mention part-time staff don't have benefits. So that's one thing. I lost my other thought. Just to note that I think a part-time planner is a good fit. It's just a very hard find. And I think my other point was, part of the reason I want to get out of it is just because I'm not, you know, officially trained. It's just learning on the job and researching, and so there's a little bit of you know, whatever stress that comes with that. But for the town's sake, you know, I think it's very important to have a trained professional doing the job, particularly with some of these larger projects or more or complicated projects come along.
Well, that certainly lets out the Vista volunteer. But maybe if we were able to occasionally hire a contract person when it was a complicated issue, that would be a solution. I don't know how they are to hire. Do you know that, Nate?
My concern on a part-time individual is that the work is not going to be a steady flow of work like 23 hours a week. It's going to be some weeks heavy, some weeks light. And unless you can find somebody that'll just sit at home, wait on a phone call, which is going to be hard to do, I would think the contract planner is the smartest way to go, even though they're a little higher price per hour. Is if this commission will take a good share of the load and only access the contract planner when we need expertise, then I think that's probably the wisest way to go if we need professional help.
I agree with that, Mike. The Vista is not going to be volunteer, is not going to be an expert. As I said, we may know more than they do. And the part-time planner is somebody that you're going to have to pay a certain amount regardless of how many hours they work. So the contract makes the most sense to me as well, Mike. All right, we've got lots more to cover tonight. I'm going to call a vote. I think we've got a motion on the table and we've got a second. Rocco, did you have something?
What was the motion?
Yeah, can you repeat the motion and I might want to addend it or amend it?
Rocco, go ahead.
I didn't write it down.
Okay, in lieu of we don't have it written down, this was a recommendation. I moved to recommend to the trustees that the town does not hire a staff planner, a town staff planner. That would still leave a contract or other things open.
And I would just add that maybe to the motion that we need to, that there would need to be monies in a budget to pay for a contract planner as needed. And I don't know how much that would be, but we might be able to do some research and guesstimate that. So I guess we're moving to recommend no formal staff, part-time or full-time, but instead entertain, nope,
That's
Would
the
that be-
motion.
okay.
That's the motion.
and then stop there and not include any.
If you want to amend the motion. you
Okay,
can.
so that's what I'd like to amend the motion. That we add that the board consider monies for a contract planner as needed.
We have a second on the amended motion.
I'll second.
Okay. Moved and seconded.
Understand?
All in favor of this?
I think Ann
Ann
needs the whole
needs-
thing recapped, which
All
wouldn't
right.
be bad for all of us, really.
Well, I guess, if I vote yes, of course, because the trustees have the final decision.
That is correct.
In my opinion, we need a planner of some kind because it is a complicated world. And we don't want the town to get in trouble with perception or anything else of favoritism. And if we have someone who is not, who's hired, that isn't an insider, I think that's always important. But
Okay, and that
I
is
won't
the
vote
motion.
against it.
So that is what the motion is.
That
we
is the
don't.
motion.
Yeah,
What you just said, that's the motion on the table, and is,
Okay, then I vote
recommend-
yes.
okay, well, let me call the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Well, hold on. I'm not sure that was the motion, what Ann just said.
Well, let me just read it, okay? I'll read the motion. We are making the recommendation to the Board of Trustees that they not hire a part-time or full-time town staff planner. Our recommendation is to hire a contract planner as needed for complicated issues that the Planning Commission is not equipped to handle.
Second.
All
Again.
in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Passes unanimously. So that is our recommendation to BOT. You have that, Nate? If not, I can send to you.
That's why I love Zoom. Thank you.
Okay. So let's get back to our old business, which is the land use code rewrite. We have some comments made by Austin. I can share my screen or I can follow along. Nate, with you?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask what the goal is, I guess, for tonight. I do have the copy from Austin that has those pretty minimal comments in it, but are you wanting to further mark up a document, or do you want to, what's your plan for this evening?
Well, my thought was that we at least, how many, let me just find this out. How many commissioners have not read through what Austin has most recently presented us?
And I do apologize. I sent out that copy late or today, not really thinking about it yesterday at 5 o'clock, but I can bring that up and we can just go through his comments and discuss those as a starting point if you want. I think.
Let me ask the commissioners, do y'all feel the need to run through the document and look at Austin's comments? Or have you read
Lamar, can I verify which iteration we're talking about? Because
The one-
he's got the public one produced for public, for us. That's what I thought in
it's-
this last email. Land use
it's
code
the-
rewrite it says clean. Then there's rewrite adoption. No, sorry. Then there's this code rewrite with his quote unquote comments, but it's just got those little yellow boxes that I could see.
Okay, why don't we share either, we can share my screen because I've got it up here. And everybody can be looking at the same thing. It's not enabled at this point in time. But
I'll do that now.
thanks.
And just this is, I think, a little bit of what Ann was addressing earlier. There are emails going back and forth. I think Lisa and Lamar and Austin were on them, but not the rest of the commission. So I think people aren't talking about the same things. Austin sent a couple different documents, one of which was the clean one, which he suggested specifically to put in the agenda packet, which this is. He sent a Word document with some of his comments addressing why he did certain things in this draft. And then the third attachment on his email was just a reiteration of the current timeline. What I did today was I just exported the Word document with his comments into a PDF and sent that out to everyone. So I think it's really important to, if documents are going to be shared, they should be shared with the entire commission on a BCC format so that everyone has the same information, but no conversation is then started about it. So
I did send that. I forwarded it as you just described to everyone. But just so we can go over it tonight, so we're all looking at the same thing, but this was sent to everyone.
Didn't get it.
Nate, I still don't have the ability to share my screen.
Different things, yeah.
Ann was not sure she received that, which is.
Well,
why
I
she
did
was
send it to her.
I didn't
so-
get all the discussion about the planning commission things that you were.
Well, we can't discuss with all of us because of the open meeting laws. I can't do that. We can't have discussion, but I did send you all of this.
No, not the blind copies.
I don't think she's BCC'd yet, but she sent it to you directly. I don't know.
No, she didn't.
That is correct. I sent it today and I can show you on my screen where I sent it to you. But let's
It is confusing.
get through our.
You should be
work.
able to share now.
Yeah, thanks.
I couldn't find Austin's comments. I
Yeah.
looked in both documents and didn't see any comments.
It's on the Word document only, and that's why we're gonna go through it tonight.
Well, I'm just now looking, I've got my computer open here. And I notice there's these yellow boxes, and when I hover over them, there's a whole lot of script that pops up.
Okay, well, that's what
And
I didn't do.
and I didn't understand that until
I
just
saw that little
now.
yellow deal and
I read those today
had
too.
no
Thank you. Nate.
idea that's what it was.
Okay, so
Not the draft.
first comment from Austin, hopefully, can y'all see my screen?
Yeah, but it's too
Barely.
small.
I think you should zoom in on the
Oh,
document if you can.
Oh, I don't
I'm not sure I can do that. No,
Yeah,
I can't.
on the bottom right, or hold control and use your scroll bar to zoom in, or I can
Can you
share
pull it
my
up?
screen.
Can you pull the same document up so we can see it in bigger
Yeah,
type?
yes.
I'm looking at page 5.
I'd like to look at the first page if you can get it pulled up.
Right, so I guess the question, Lamar, is, are we gonna go through Austin's comments, or are we just gonna go page by page?
Austin's comments only. We don't have time to go page by page. If
All right, hold on. Can you stop at that very first?
The first comment from Austin,
The applicability, before we get down to the comment, I want to make sure, I've talked about this before, but I want to make sure that the grandfather clause is plain. Is that plain enough? About the applicability, Article 1, number 1, after the effective date of this land code, all buildings and structures? Because I don't want to make sure we're not going back and changing the water on people that have already got property and they don't comply with this new code.
I'm going to make a note to ask Austin about that. Mike, I can
All right.
understand why you would have a question on that.
I stressed that too, Mike. Yeah.
No. You've got color restrained utilities for electric and water. But we're on a cesspool. And all the code about parking and everything else is just way
Okay,
too.
I can't hear, so talk in the microphone.
Just talking to my neighbor here. Go ahead.
One thing that I noticed, that wasn't yellow, there was no yellow marker. But I had asked the question of Austin, why no Board of Adjustment? Well, he has added something in his new thing. It's on the definitions and so on. Who says the Planning Commission will act as the Board of Adjustment and the Historic Foundation body.
This was just.
So that's something new that if we don't read the whole code again, we wouldn't have noticed.
That was something that was discussed after you left the meeting, I believe, last time.
But it wasn't put in, as a correction by Austin in his draft. That's all I was saying.
I think that is a good point, Lamar. I think to ease our review of a document, whenever Austin makes a change, I've worked in bureaucracy before where you'd put a change bar on the side to the reader would understand that that section or that paragraph or sentence has changed. Like Mike was looking at that Article 1, Section 1. Well, Austin changed all that, but there's no comment from him on there. So I think it would help guide us to review it, that whenever Austin makes a change, he puts some kind of change marker in there, so we know that that information is different.
Okay, Rocco, I will ask him to redline, because that's usually what attorneys do when they make changes. They do a redline version so you can see what they changed. So I'll ask him to do that. And this is tonight's a public meeting, and I guess we have another one coming up for public input. And so we're supposed to go back to him with public input and our own input for that matter. So we want to see those changes redlined. And what would really be helpful is we need to have something from him that shows the major changes. That's something that we really were expecting to present. So I will ask for that as well.
And while we're on that, I know Nate just got this latest things that we reviewed yesterday. It would be nice for Austin to understand the timelines, and especially if we want public comment. I would recommend to Austin, and I don't know how Nate feels about this, by noon Friday at the latest to get those documents in for our meetings on Tuesday.
Okay, so is that a change in our timeline? Because he's meeting the deadlines. He's meeting the deadlines that we gave him. So he was to have draft to us by today, and he actually had it ahead of schedule. And then the next deadline is the 8th of November. And this is where we're supposed to have public comment. This is our meeting with the public. And then the 22nd is also our meeting with the public. And then the 28th is the deadline when we're supposed to have our list of public engagement comments to him. And then he is to have the revision to us by the 2nd of December. So it can be posted for the December 6th meeting. So, I mean, he's right on track, if not early, for what he's been asked to do. The 9th. Is a draft that he will have to us by the 9th, which will be posted for the 13th meeting. So that's hitting your Friday before the Tuesday. And then the 13th is when the BOT is supposed to vote on it. So if we want to change his deadlines, we need to let him know, but so far he's ahead of schedule. Based on what we all agreed to.
Looking at the schedule, as things come up from now until the 28th,
Mhm.
I would hope that this document continues to be edited based on our comments before that meeting on the 8th.
He's supposed to send us a revised version by the 25th, which is today, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's the one he got us, he got it to us, I guess, a day early. But yes, right, so
On the day of the
if
meeting.
we have comments, we should continue to send them, and I think he's happy to work on it ahead of time and not wait until, getting them all on the 28th, and he sends us something on the 2nd. So, yeah.
So Lamar, what iteration are you reviewing with us right now?
Well, I may have an old one,
Okay, I think it is. I'm not sure.
okay?
The new one that he sent yesterday and that Nate sent us today or whatever has these yellow boxes. Is that what are we talking about the same?
Well, I thought you were talking
It's the
about the
same as
calendar.
this.
It's the
one-
same. I
Yeah.
don't think so.
Yeah, the one I'm looking at that we got today that I forwarded to each of you is the very one that Nate has up on the screen. Exact same thing.
Oh,
This is
I guess I don't. have
Recent
it.
copy.
Maybe I didn't get it either.
Well, this is in Word format. What I sent to you is PDF format with
It's a
these
PDF.
comments.
And
It
I
has these
sent,
comments in it. You just see them differently.
Okay,
You have to
let me
click.
see if I can figure that out.
You have to click on them.
and I
the-
sent each of you all of his copies with his instructions about which one to look at for the copies. And Lisa, you were copied at the same time I was copied when he sent this. So you have it from him, and I may not have forwarded it to you again. And just so everybody on the commission understands, we can't have everybody, we can't have any more than 2 people from the commission on the same email. Lisa is the co-chair. If something happens to me, she has to take over. So Lisa is kept on all the emails for that reason.
I have a little question too. I sent in a lot of comments, but I didn't see my questions answered. They were added, by Nate to be sent to Austin. I don't know if any of you saw those or not.
Mm-mm.
Did you?
Some of them, Austin, I think, decided what to address and what not to. We don't have a big budget for legal. So I think he didn't know what to do, I think, with some of the questions, and he wasn't going to write a big, long answer and use up our.
No, it wasn't. I would recommend, leave this out or edit that, and he didn't. There wasn't anything about that. So that's all right. I don't care.
But let's move through the evening, okay? So this first comment is about the PUD, planned unit development. I think there were a number of people that had questions about that. And I think when he got a bunch of the same questions from a lot of different people, he did address them. If it was maybe the same person, he didn't, I don't know. But anyway, here's his comment. I can read it aloud or y'all can read it to yourself, but he's explaining what a PUD is.
Sure, what you're gonna see on your district. This is what you're gonna see.
Yeah, I saw that.
Did
Uh-huh.
you click on it?
Mhm, I
didn't know
did.
to do it. Yeah, so
Yeah.
then that's what she's got in a
That's
different
what she's
format.
got up here,
It's exactly the same.
because he got that out
Yeah.
today,
I'm-
so.
I'm just showing her on my computer how she'll see it at home.
Yeah, and
Okay,
I
thank
did
you.
see that, I did see that
Okay.
today, so thank you, Nate. That
You're
was
welcome.
wonderful.
Okay, let's move down. Do we have any comments or questions about the PUD?
No, he mentions the affordable housing, which is true, which is good. Mhm.
So Lamar, I know he had like his comments in yellow, but it may be more beneficial if we're taking the time just to see what he changed. Because he did make substantial changes on, say, like the next page for the downtown village overlay.
Okay,
Right, he did.
For the design requirements, he eliminated the window stuff and,
all the stuff we asked him to get rid of.
right. So that, I thought that was good. And I thought it was a good compromise. He kept, he removed the stucco restriction.
He's added in some things.
He left
about
the awnings.
animals.
Extending 4 feet beyond the building.
The thing that I thought we agreed to, though, was the overlays, the downtown village and the historic preservation. The applicant needs to apply for those overlays, and I see nothing in the code that states that, and I think that needs to be very explicit.
Okay, hang on, I'm juggling two screens here, trying to see the previous and the current comments. So I can see what's been changed. All right, so we're on, and this old one doesn't have a page number, unfortunately. All right, so I'm going to make notes of this because real time changing it didn't work so well. All right. Are you talking about page 6?
Yeah, the downtown, well, overlays and both overlays he was speaking to.
And we just want it really clear that
Can you make Austin's comments any bigger? I can't read them.
we need to make this really clear that this is at the option of the owners.
Right, the language I came up with for both downtown village and historic preservation, the applicant needs to apply for this overlay.
That's good.
Propose that and see what Austin comes up with.
Okay.
Good.
Are we good on this one that he's on right now? Purpose and procedure?
Well, that would be in the purpose and procedure part, right? Yeah, I don't understand the question. Because we're in historic preservation, we're not in purpose, and you're just saying that that's a procedure. Oh, comments related to purpose procedure here have been addressed in the procedures below. I see what you're saying. Okay. So he's saying it's below.
Yeah, I'm guessing, Rocco, that he's gonna say if you have to apply for it, how do you apply? You know, I just don't know if he's gonna have to put more details in there about how to apply and what constitutes an application, blah, blah, blah.
Well, is it in purpose and procedures? How is it? Administrative review.
Comments.
That's
Yeah,
what- God, yeah.
I think it could be pretty easy language to put down. Similar to like application submittals and fees. On one of the pages in section 5, they say the application shall be submitted to the planning department on a form established by the planning department.
Yeah,
So that's pretty generic.
yeah. Okay, any more that we need to cover on that? Most recent comment. We're down to uses. This next comment is for page 11. So this is regarding short-term rentals. And what this is going to take,
Does that mean?
Yeah. I'm
a
on
red
the-
line version, I don't know if he'll provide one. But it's going to take all of us reading over this again and seeing what issues we have.
What does accessory use mean? I've forgotten.
Okay, the A is. Oh, you wrote that down there.
Accessory use.
Used by right when
Yeah, let's see if
accessory.
it's in the back. Definition. Accessory building structure or use is in the definitions. A building structure or use located or conducted upon the same lot or in a contiguous lot in the same ownership as the primary building, structure or use to which it's related that is clearly incidental to and customarily found in connection with such primary building for or use and is operated and maintained for the building and convenience of the owner, occupant, employee, customer, visitors of the lot. So I would say a shed or, right? It's not a dwelling. There's accessory dwelling, which is different.
I don't understand how that relates to a short-term rental. Can we
Um,
go back to that.
What?
The use, it's a use, the short-term rental is a use, not a
Mhm.
building. You know what I mean?
No, I don't.
But-
If it's the primary building, there's no accessory building, then, yeah, I get what you're saying.
But why are you calling it an accessory building? Yeah.
Right.
It's not a building, it's a use.
An accessory use.
And yeah,
But
accessory
in that
use-
definition is accessory building, common structure or use.
And he says that accessory used by right, and we know what that means. That means you own it and you get to use it like you want to.
Yeah, but I don't understand this section then apparently. Why is a short-term rental listed as an accessory use? It's primary use.
Yeah, I agree. I don't understand that either.
Well, some properties have two buildings on one lot.
Right, but the other building would be the accessory dwelling
accessory
unit.
building.
It's a
Yeah.
different, it would be an accessory, right? So,
And you could use it as an accessory.
right,
mean,
but
how's that
when you
work
don't
out?
have that, they're calling just the primary building an accessory.
Oh,
Is that, am I getting you right, Mike?
I don't know. This
Right.
is confusing.
Which is confusing.
It's confusing for me too.
Try to simplify it. I'll jump in. Sorry if I'm overstepping my bounds. Table 3.1 is your primary uses. So you have basically a single family dwelling or, duplex, triplex. Those are your primary uses. If you choose to have a short-term rental, that is now an accessory use.
Oh, okay.
So it's not,
Use is the word, the key word.
it's the
Got it.
use is the thing to focus on there.
Okay. Thank you.
Got article, it references Article 3E.
Does that accessory use then require some additional action by the owner? Is it,
Your
What-
short-term rental license
Mhm.
and all that.
okay,
Free EV.
But would that be considered a conditional use?
You're okay with me interjecting?
Please.
I think with some of the, my understanding with some of the court cases, it's almost it gets into the right, but that is a good question for Austin.
Is it
Because people
conditional?
are using that as a property right. to be able to-
If you go to Article 3.3 EV, it says short-term rentals will require permit in accordance with blah, blah, blah.
You
So it's
can
defined.
permit 'em. You can
So he's
permit 'em.
added that use-specific standard there. Okay. I guess we're covered, it sounds like.
I think we're covered. I think it's good.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right. Thanks, Todd.
Conditional use?
All right, let's go to the next comment. All right, we're on page 18. Oh, we got that confirmed by Becky today, so
No.
it's confirmed. So we can skip that one. All right, we're on page 21.
He doesn't, it might be, Rocco was just, I know this is back to our tables, but it might be a good idea to include like conditional use, a definition of that in the back. Temporary use, what does that mean? Use by right. Unless it's defined, like, no, because it's just use by right, an X equals use by right. What does that mean? Just to further define it. Would you agree? To put it in the definitions. Ask him to do that.
Sure, we can. Yeah, I'm making notes on it. Yeah, if we don't find those in the definition, we do need to. All right, so I'm not sure why he added this, but on number 1 here, driveway, this would include a cut
Signs.
designated for particular uses, parking. Driveways always involve cuts, right?
What page are you on?
What page are you on?
It's
Oh,
the
I'm
next
sorry,
comment,
I skipped this
page
one.
21.
Oh,
So why did he say this? Why is this necessary to say?
hmm.
I mean,
We skipped 18, page 18, but referral agents.
there's always a cut in a roadway, right? Anybody understand why that's necessary or why he pointed that out? Was that on anybody's question? I don't think,
This would include a cut. So meaning just like a little cut in, I think that's the definition. Maybe he needs to define what a cut is. Put that back in the definition too.
gotcha.
I mean, I'm just visualizing a little divot in the road where you could pull off halfway, your car half-ass off the road. Or maybe all the way off the road in a little thing. But maybe let's define that.
So he's saying it doesn't just have to be a driveway. He's defining driveway as a cut in a roadway. Because I know cut from the definition of a realtor's definition would be a cut, where you break into a curb and that's where you're parking, you enter your parking lot, or that's my experience with the definition of the word cut. So we do need to find that out.
So this was in response to a comment from Todd that said problematic for GMF may have a cut in front of the property. It's not in a driveway or garage.
If we pull over in the right.
So I've got an issue
Or
with
in the
that.
yard or whatever, right?
I've got an issue with that. We're not defining it well enough because we've got to have our roadways clear for emergency vehicles. And this could be, a cut could be anything anybody wants to call it.
Right, so we need to have it defined as an appropriate
Well, I think I
parking situation.
disagree with Todd regarding that a cut should count. I think it needs to be a
And
driveway.
what was your comment, Todd, then? Sorry.
It needs to be off-street parking. And what I'm thinking of is up on Grandview, where you basically have these little, and I don't know what else to call
Like
it.
a little culvert or a
Yeah,
little,
little culvert.
right,
or
that's what I'm
angular-
thinking of too.
angular type parking thing,
And the car is
Still
off
gotta
the
be-
road.
but I think it's still got to be off right away.
Yes.
And so,
Ah, okay.
yeah, I think when I was looking at it, when I commented earlier, I was thinking of Grandview where you got. the
Right.
little
Well, we
triangle
should figure this out
shaped
because this is huge for us and for safety and all that. So that's a big topic that
And
we
we
need
are
to.
talking about new properties where somebody buys a piece of property and puts a
Yeah.
house on it and has to figure out how to do
Modifies.
this, right?
or modifies.
Yeah, because we got properties all over town that have cuts right beside the road.
We have properties in
And that-
town that have zero off-street. parking.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So you can't go back and tell them they have to have this.
Well,
but
and that is
falls up-
problematic because if the homeowner wants to modify the property, now they're required to follow these requirements.
That's right.
And there's
What
not
does
enough land
modified
to
mean?
do it.
Put
I
a new
mean, in
roof
some
on.
spots, there's not enough land.
Well,
Put a new roof.
experiences as if it's really a huge issue like that, but we've got a huge issue in this town with getting people out during a fire and getting emergency vehicles to the fire. And we cannot continue to allow people to park in the right of way.
Well, we're not talking about parking in the street. We're just talking about parking alongside the street.
Well, keep in mind, the right of way usually goes to your yard. It's not.
40 feet wide.
What's that?
The right
Well,
of
the right of way
way,
came along after some of these houses were built too. And I mean, you go
understand.
down Belvedere and some of the houses are right on top of the street and you can't do anything about that.
So that these may be instances that we have to solve as a planning commission later, right? But for right
Right,
now, for the
right, with
purposes of the
variances.
code, we need to make it appropriate.
exactly.
Well, could say a landowner doesn't have the required parking, they want to modify the property, they could ask for a variance.
Right.
Right.
So there are provisions to account for situations. They would just need to ask for a variance. There'd be a little more application process,
Mhm.
notifying the adjacent landowners.
And you've already set that precedent
Right.
on a
Sure.
couple of things here recently.
Right.
Right,
Sure.
that's been done a long time.
So back to the issue with Austin, we just need to have him define what a cut is.
Well, I just want to have him say you have to be out of the right of way.
Right, and, or a cut would be out of the right of way or whatever it would be, yeah.
It is not in the right of way.
He uses that
If you
cut
say
several
right of way,
times.
then someone has to prove where the right of way actually is.
Well, they
Well,
just,
again, we're gonna
they'll probably
have to,
require a survey. If they're
but
doing
we have to move in the direction of keeping
Mhm.
our roadways clear because people can die. It's really important.
Okay.
So, if it takes a survey, it takes a survey, but
So in that case, I don't even know if Todd's proposal to include cut even fits.
that's my point here.
Well, as angular things, even though it's in.
Todd, you need a
Are
bond.
are those angular things, whatever we call them, even though they were on private property, is that considered a quote unquote driveway?
Pull by or whatever they.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna say yes if it's not in the right of way.
Yeah, if we call that a driveway, and it's a moot point.
Or even a
Yeah.
parking space, right? Because we've
Parking
defined
space.
that, what,
It's-
15
Yeah.
by 8 or something later in the code.
Yeah,
Right.
you know, if we, yeah, it's,
So maybe parking space.
Parking space,
Yeah.
not driveway. Doesn't have
I
to.
think it needs to be bigger than 15 feet because a
Right.
truck is 18 feet.
Mike, can't
So-
hear you.
I can park my Model A in 15 feet, but
I
can't
just,
park
I just remember that that term cut is used as a, it's, I read these all this afternoon and I think I saw it more than once. So we just need to just ask him to define and maybe and whatever.
Okay, I'll
Wherever
make
the
those
cuts
notes.
thing are. Yeah, okay. Move
All right,
on.
next comment is still on page 21, under signs. As written, this section allows a certain number and type of signs by right. There is no approval process or permit required. This is to protect the right of free speech.
And this is, there were several comments from commissioners about this is too complicated. How does a sign threaten, public health, safety and welfare? Who decides? Quality design. So they're just, I think you're responding to several comments here.
Mhm.
Just to say, I think to point out that maybe I'm guessing here that the complexity or maybe how he's written it doesn't matter so much because there's no approval process or permit required. It's just sort of a standard.
Recommendation,
section.
sign
We left
section.
out
Feel good.
all that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was one of the people who's just like, this is too complicated. He did pare it down. He took out several
Mhm.
paragraphs. So I think it's a compromise. And ultimately, if it's a little pared down, now it can be enforced.
Mhm.
So you're good with it as it is?
I think so.
I think he compromised by taking out some things that didn't belong.
So you're okay? Rocco?
I can live with it.
Mhm.
All right. All right, now we're on page 24.
Yeah. So that wasn't addressed.
Number 9, subdivision standards. He's just trying to comply with state law, he says. State law has certain exemptions. This is a reference to that. So if you had questions about that, he's addressing it there.
We go back up to 8.
8.
Okay. Signs,
Signs.
what else?
Still a lot.
8B,
Okay,
8B2.
okay.
Decorations.
Okay, no, it's another 8, somewhere it must be in a different section. I'm
What does
sorry.
it say? What does the one,
What?
what are you
The
concerned
one
about?
I'm talking about is that the owner is responsible for basically turning himself in, and we'll get to that later. It's
Turning
kind of
himself
clear.
in.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's-
It's the
About a sign?
non-conformities, I think.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so let's
He
keep
has a non-conformity, he's got to turn himself in.
Oh,
the next comment, and you tell me if we're passing what you want to talk about. But our next comment is a ways down here. I'm not sure we have any more comments. You have a page number, Mike, tell us. Okay, page 45 is the next. comment.
yikes. Not there.
Oh, this is the one Mike's talking about, I think. Like any burden of proof, the onus should be on the one bringing the action forward. A property owner is required to do this to keep their non-conforming status when it becomes issue.
Yeah, there it is.
For example, the town files a violation or the property owner brings forward an application. So this is B.
My question is, how would a citizen even know if it was non-conforming if they haven't read this thing and gotten involved in things like this? And why should we expect them to come forward with some non-conformity? Looks like it's up to us to decide if it's a non-conformity.
Nate, I think you had a good explanation for this. What was it?
This only comes into play if if someone wants to, how to describe it?
Well, as he says, it's only an issue if the town files a violation or if the property owner brings forward an application, right?
Right, so if someone comes forward with an application that they're changing something, but it fits within the definition of nonconformity, meaning they can proceed without abiding by new regulations. It's their responsibility to prove why their property should be considered a nonconformity.
This also applies to someone turning in somebody that has done something or is doing something.
What?
I believe it is.
Well, that's when, like, if the town, if someone said, trying to think of a good example of this,
You mean if someone
but it's all,
breaks the law,
it's
that's
all,
considered a nonconformity?
it's all dependent on what is in the rest of this section too. Like, how is a nonconformity defined? So it basically says, I'm just trying to think of a good.
He's got a lot of non-conforming definitions. There's non-conforming lot of record, non-conforming parking, non-conforming sign, non-conforming structure, non-conforming use, and nursing home. So that's not, that's on to end.
But how would the owner of the property even know it was a non-conformity?
Right,
If they
I-
hadn't read this document.
I-
I mean, all the citizens in the town are not going to read this.
No,
So why would
I
it be
think-
their responsibility to know what's in here and turn themselves in and say this is non-conforming?
There have been instances
I
of
think it's,
stop orders.
I think it, in the situation would be the applicant comes in, staff or whoever's processing the application would look at it and say, and determine that it could fit into this nonconformity, but then it goes back to the applicant to
work it out.
prove it as part of the application. I think it hinges on staff
oh,
or whoever
To cure the defect.
identifying it.
Yeah.
Or if someone, I'm struggling to come up with a good example here, but
Yeah, really, the only thing you could do is if someone came in with an application and, they're wanting to say, keep their same setback or whatever it is, because the setback may be different. They may say, I want to keep my existing setback. It's a nonconformity. I was thinking they had some provisions for that in here too, but I'm not sure now. But it's not a thing where we're expecting people to come and turn themselves in. That's not it at all. Now, we may get into something to where someone gets a violation. And they could come in and say, okay,
How do I fix it?
I'm a non-conforming use because I've been doing this for the last 20 years. The burden of proof is on them,
Okay.
not us.
yeah, yeah.
It's
Okay.
kind of what we've already been doing already. I don't think this is that different from what we've already been doing. Would I be right about that, Nate?
well, I don't know. I think we've made people go the variance route, like in the instance of those recent decks.
Mhm.
But that was a little different because their property actually went into the right of way. So that was a little different. But it says here on the screen, so repairs necessary to maintain and correct any damage or deterioration of structural soundness of blah, 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 building without expanding the height or footprint of the building or structure. So if a neighbor complained that, their neighbor was doing work on their house that they thought should come in front of the planning commissioner, get certain permits, or maybe the neighbor is trying to, I don't know, say that this is the opportunity that, if they're closer than whatever the current setback is, for instance. If the neighbor complains and said, oh, they're doing something that requires them to now abide by the new setback requirement, then at that point, the staff would go to the person that's doing the work and assess the situation, and the staff would help the person determine that it's a nonconformity, I think, in the end. But I think that would be a situation where
I'll tell you kind of a funny
would fit. I
story
don't
about years ago. It's been 20 or 30 years ago when Chris enforced the code. My son, who was 15, was putting some new shingles on the front of our old house. They're just little, not much, because they were rotten. And someone complained, and she walked by and she said, you need a permit for that. And so we went down to Pikes Peak Building, and they laughed and gave us paid a $10 thing and a sign to put in our window that we could put those things on. But those things do happen.
Well,
And,
that's why we're addressing that maintenance is permitted and encouraged is the language.
Mhm.
So I think that's a good thing.
I do too. Mhm.
But if you want to put, say, a new floor on your deck and you're not going to change a thing except new boards instead of rotten boards, still have to come down and get a permit for that?
Not anymore.
No?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Pikes Peak Regional, if you're replacing the entire decking, then yes, you should get a permit for that. Now, the town could have a different
Yeah.
threshold of that's
Oh.
fits into the nonconformity or doesn't. I think that probably does, because you're not expanding the height or footprint.
Yeah, you're
of
not
it
doing a
as
thing except putting
defined
new
here.
boards where the old boards were.
So in that case, then it would be your responsibility to prove that you're not expanding the footprint of it.
Okay.
But you may still have to go to Pikes Peak and get a permit, because if you're replacing the entire decking, they consider that
Structural or something.
necessary to have a structural
Yeah.
inspection.
Well, the other thing with that example is that we, I believe, are asking people if they're replacing the entire deck, they should not come in with the same wood material. They should be coming in with fire resistant materials. So that is a whole different issue.
You think that should be in here?
Well, I think it's in what we've done with our codes regarding
Okay. I don't know where.
avoiding fire.
One of our applicants recently proved that some kind of special Brazilian wood was very
That
fireproof.
would be classified as a fire resistant material.
Uh-huh.
Let's move on, please.
I think that's it.
All right, so is there something we needed to check in our definitions?
Well, I don't think he's got any comments, but
No, he doesn't. He
just
doesn't.
the things that we were talking about, that you made notes about the cut, and what was the other
Yeah.
thing? Oh, accessory,
Yeah, defining conditional. use,
conditional, right, temporary, all
use,
that.
right, right.
Yeah, all those.
Yep, I've got those notes.
Yeah, so there's nothing else.
All right, well, I want to encourage everyone. I know that we just got this. And so we've gone through it tonight. So you see how to see his comments, you see how to read it. Please spend some time with it. And if you have more concerns, comments, whatever, send them to Nate. He'll compile and send.
Lamar, can I ask Todd something? Todd, you said just review the minor. Are you talking about minor site plan?
Yeah, it's on page 34.
34. Okay, all right. You kept saying the minor. That's what I
And
thought.
One,
but-
one thing before we leave this, Lamar, is there's been a big change in approval, and it went from a planning director or something to town manager.
Right.
And I want to just discuss among our group if we feel that's appropriate, that the town manager should have the approval authority for those instances that the planning director used to have.
What page is that? Do you know? Or
It's
back?
throughout the document.
Throughout it. Yeah, here's something about application submittal fee can be waived by the town manager. Mm,
Our town manager does not even attend the planning commission meetings. I don't think that our town manager wants to be responsible for all of this.
If there's no other staff, then they would be.
Right, so,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. So
on 29, it's town manager's going to do this and that.
I think this addresses the very issue that we were talking about earlier tonight. And thank you for the reminder, Rocco, that I think the planning commission is where the buck is going to have to stop, because we don't know what staff we're going to have, what staff will be available to do all of this. I think
So should that be defined differently then, where he's got it just sprinkled
Yeah.
throughout, that the town manager is going to do this and that and,
yes.
It has a lot of ripple effects, though, for that
Mhm.
section 5, which deals with approvals and appeals and everything like that. So
Mhm.
I think we should discuss before we adjourn what our recommendation is.
Well, I agree. What should it be?
So he has pre-application, approval for what? There's common procedures, purpose, pre-application conference procedure, there's an application submittal and fee procedure, abandoned applications and withdrawal, minor application revisions.
With the recommendation that we made to BOT tonight unanimously, the planning commission better be willing to take on the responsibility in all these places where it says town manager.
You'd have to meet a lot more often. to
Well,
get-
we're already
serve the
meeting
citizens.
double.
Well, seasonally.
Mhm.
We are already meeting double the time that any other planning commission has ever.
Table.
They don't normally ever meet twice a month except during building season during the summer. But in historically, there've been years where they went months without meeting. So we are already meeting a great deal of time, but I don't think that's necessarily the issue. The issue is if, with the recommendation that we're making to BOT, we need to be prepared. And I think, as we talked about, this is a code that is supposed to be overarching, overreaching, long-term work for whatever situation. And I think there always has been a planning commission and there always will be. We don't know about all the staff, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we need to be everywhere it says town manager, it needs to be planning commission. What are the thoughts of everybody else?
Well, I'm just looking at the old one. It used to say planning director in table 5.1, and now it's town manager. Planning commission was the same, and then board of trustees is the
Right,
same.
he
under
did
review
a
and dis-
universal change.
Yeah.
I think I've heard Todd or Nate mention you change town manager to town staff potentially, because
Mhm.
an applicant's going to come to town hall.
Mm.
Planning commission is not here. Could they call a commissioner in to do a piece of paper? Potentially, but really how it works is I think, how does it work now, Nate? Someone comes in, you give them the right application to fill out. So maybe that part doesn't change.
Well, the town manager can delegate to whoever staff they happen to have at the time.
That's how it's defined.
So, town manager, town of Green Mountain Falls, or his or her authorized representative. So town manager's okay as far as I'm concerned, because they're going to delegate it to whoever they want.
Like
Whoever's appropriate.
staff,
Unless-
that's down
Unless we
staff,
end up with a period we don't have a town manager.
Mhm.
exactly. Town,
Well, there'd be a temporary or appointed or something. There'd be somebody in charge.
It-
Well, you
Not
can do
necessarily.
We'd
no,
probably,
not necess- we've
Wouldn't-
gone a
wouldn't
lot of
be-
years with no
Yeah.
manager. A
I-
lot, a lot.
personally, the table itself has two generics and one specific.
Mhm.
And to me, that's a little out of whack. You know, it ought to be like planning commission, board of trustees and town staff.
Okay, town staff's fine.
Yeah.
So you think changing manager to staff throughout would solve the
Well,
problem?
Not throughout, just in specifically that table. We'd have to look at each occurrence to say, okay, does it makes more sense to have, say, town staff? Or is there a
Mhm.
specific reason why we're basically focusing in on a position?
But wouldn't town staff work for everything?
Should.
I mean, more like
Yeah.
Lisa said, not just this section.
Mhm.
throughout,
Make it
because
consistent.
Then it's flexible as to what the town can afford.
Yeah.
Or find.
I'd feel more comfortable with town staff personally, but
Mhm.
But if a
I
town
agree.
manager leaves, you're going to designate somebody to take that role until you
Town
get a new
staff.
permanent one,
well,
right?
yeah, actually, by
Not
code, I
necessarily.
think if town manager leaves, it falls on my shoulders, but
Well, then you be
You
doing.
have to change.
You've become the town
I
staff.
become the town staff, I guess.
We're always gonna have some kind of staff, whether it town clerk. So there'll be some kind of staff. We don't know their titles, but let's leave it at staff. I agree with you, Todd.
Do you want to talk about
Make
the
those
minor?
substitutions.
And don't forget, we're not writing the final code. We're just, there's a lot more to go with the trustees.
Do you want to, I think this minor is a pretty
What page are you on?
Significant.
Yes.
discussion.
What page is it?
34.
34? Oh, back to 34. Okay.
Especially under applicability. 125 is pardon me, is residential development that contains 5 dwelling units or less. And that would be decision under like town staff. We only have one-offs, or we traditionally only have one-offs. So yeah, I was gonna suggest just look at this and make sure you're in agreement with it, and if not,
So a minor site plan. Okay.
Mhm.
What's the definition of that? It's not defined.
Yeah.
Could you add that to definitions as well?
Minor site plan,
Versus a major and define it in the definitions?
so this.
This is the definition of it, of what it is, and then it, whatever a minor site plan is defined as here, that means that staff approves it versus planning commission.
Versus when with planning commission, what are you saying versus?
Your
that
table.
the staff.
Administrative
Yeah.
approval
Oh, in the
versus
table.
planning
Got it, got
commission
it.
approval, in that table we were just looking at.
Yes.
And the table is on what page?
27 and 28.
Okay, so we need to define
Mm.
minor site plan, major site plan, and I don't think anything on page 34 should be left up to staff in case we don't have staff. Is that agreeable?
Well, if we don't have staff, it'd have to come to this committee by definition, wouldn't it?
I thought one of the main points of this whole rewrite was to simplify it for applicants and not have everything go to planning commission.
Yeah, I mean, this looks good to me. And if we don't have staff, I mean, that's an unforeseen situation if we didn't have any staff at all. But if the planning person is gone or unavailable, then one of the other staff have to pick it up.
Well, okay, wait. So let's just look at number one. So then that means that you can construct an accessory structure less than 200 square feet anywhere you want, whatever you want to do, without any contingencies.
No, it means the person here, the staff member, would deal with that application and he would
Oh.
look at the code and determine whether or not it fits the code. But it wouldn't
Okay.
have to come to the planning
I
commission.
see. Okay.
And you could build commercial development, 5,000 square feet or less without coming to the planning commission.
We would, I think that the chart says we're available for an appeal or something like that, but staff would approve it.
I don't like that one.
I don't either.
I don't like 5. A change in use that involves or requires a site improvement, number 3. Or a residential development with 5 dwelling units, or I don't,
We really want staff just approving 5 dwelling units or less.
no.
I mean, we made some of this stuff conditional because we really wanted to take a close look at it.
And it doesn't include decks right now.
And it should include decks. And that's what we talked about earlier. It was decks, fences, little outbuildings, retaining walls, things like that. Just come to staff and get done and not pester the committee with that. If we want to take out number 5 and number 6, I'm okay with that. But I would add back decks as another item in that list.
Okay,
What about decks?
They
Yeah.
could approve a new deck or.
So
the change
construction of a new deck.
Of a new deck or alteration of an existing deck.
what if it goes into right of way? What if it goes in on somebody else's property? What if?
Well,
it-
they're looking at the code and if it doesn't comply with the code, then they can
Then it
turn it down
to
and the
us.
people can come to the committee with an appeal.
Right, then
What
it
if
comes to
they-
us.
What if they decide not to turn it down and they do a variance?
But it's probably come to us on a variance.
Variances all have to be approved by the board as well.
Okay,
I just think we ought to get the routine work done by the staff and the committee deals or the commission deals with the more complicated and multifaceted kinds of things that we don't need to sit here and look at the code and on a deck or a fence or something like that and deliberate it.
hey, it's getting late, but we need to come full circle. Tonight, we voted unanimously that planning commission would be handling everything unless it was complex. That was our recommendation to BOT, is that they not hire staff and that planning commission would be handling routine stuff. And if it was complex, we would recommend that they hire a contract planner to help us with complex things. So this code as being proposed right now is not following what we just unanimously said we wanted to recommend to BOT. So somebody help me understand that.
You're right.
You're right.
I think maybe I ought to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Doing all speak at once, right?
Mike said that Nate should just keep doing it.
Well, you know, I don't get a vote on what Nate does.
Yeah.
I think that Nate does an excellent job.
Mhm.
I do know that bookkeepers are easy to hire and probably less expensive. So I can't imagine that it's an enhancement of Nate's career to go be a bookkeeper, but that's just me. I do vote for Nate to continue to do his fine work in planning, maps, the stuff that the average person doesn't know how to do.
Thanks for your vote of confidence.
Well, you know,
Triple his
you may not-
salary.
you may not feel that you've been trained or whatever, but like I said, on the job training to me, a lot of times is way better than sitting in some classroom.
We'd be money ahead to give Nate a little raise and not hire a planner.
There you go.
Hmm.
But we do need a bookkeeper. We do need a bookkeeper.
Yeah, hire a bookkeeper.
And paying an auditor is a very expensive bookkeeper. I can find you a lot cheaper bookkeeper.
Ours is pretty cheap right now. Well, it's food for thought as far as staffing goes, I would say. The other thing I just remembered when you mentioned maps, I do have a map. Well, I've done the data calculations, but didn't finalize the map layout yet. But I have a map showing kind of ranges of square footage of all the parcels in town. So when you're thinking about minimum building in the zoning districts, like the minimum square footages and things like that, I can finish up a map in pretty in the near future, next couple days. I just have to kind of slap a legend on it that makes sense. But so if you want to take a look at that, that'll kind of inform you on how many parcels are, you know, under 3,000 square feet, how many are 3,000 to 5,000, et cetera. I broke it into about 7 or 8 different classifications. So the other thing so I can send that out. The other thing I was going to mention is on the 19th, I think it was, or 17th, I sent out the version, the Word document, and then a PDF after that that had everyone's comments in it that was sent to Austin. I can resend that as well if you all want to review those and make sure there aren't any major things that weren't addressed by Austin. And then if you want to just email me back with concerns, then, you know, or Lamar, then we can forward them on to Austin, or at least, I guess, or if there's anything that you want explanation on, like why wasn't this addressed or whatever that is. So maybe that's a good next step if there's some major concerns with those.
That's nice of you.
The other piece of it is I'm finalizing a draft for the newspaper publication, so that will explain all the meetings coming up. So that will basically, on this schedule here, it lists out all the upcoming meetings and the schedule of that. I sent it to Austin for his review just to make sure I'm not missing anything critical in that public notice. So, so I can send all that information out tomorrow, and the newspaper publishing will be next Wednesday.
Thanks for doing all that. We appreciate it. Just to full circle on our most recent discussion, I plan to send Austin comments that are consistent with what we are recommending to BOT regarding page 34. And y'all have a chance to think about that, and we'll, you know, if you change your mind or you have a different view, we can certainly discuss it. How do we present our recommendation to BOT? Do you handle that, or do we need to draw up a memo or something?
Yeah, we'll just draft a a memo for Board of Trustees, just summarizing, I guess, the latest, the preceding planning commission discussion, but I do think it would be, I think we talked with Austin about this, but I think it would be helpful to have a summary of major changes that is presented. I think it would probably be easiest for him to put that together, but
Talking
Yes.
about changes between the old code and this new version.
just for
Yes.
public presentation and board understanding and all that discussion.
Well, that's my understanding of what he's creating, and red line versions from draft to draft, as Rocco pointed out, I will also ask for.
As we know, as I noticed, when I read through this newest one, that, and he had mentioned that, and I'm belaboring this maybe, but he did take out the Board of Adjustment and put all those duties on the Planning Commission officially. So the board will have to repeal some ordinances because those are in the law now as to Board of Adjustment and so on.
Yeah, I wonder if that, well, the board should discuss that on whether they want a whole separate Board of Adjustment or as it's written, I guess,
Adopt this as an ordinance.
or just modify the current definition of it to say that Board of Adjustment is the planning commissioner or whatever makes sense.
And the historic, there was something else that, the duty, yeah. So there's a lot more duty. Well, you've got it anyway, because you grant variances and so on.
So, Nate, were you going to go over our legal expenses today?
Yeah, I have a quick update on that.
Hmm.
Okay, here it is. So the only thing that's changed on this spreadsheet since last time is just this number here. So so this 1011, that was really a September 30th invoice. That's just when we sent out for payment or entered it into the accounting system. But so for the month of October, we haven't been billed yet, but he's worked that amount of money, which is, hold on, I can get the, I believe it was 24 hours, but I can double check.
Well, I'm amazed at how much has gotten done for just, for the number of hours that it's pretty amazing
I
for
agree.
$10,000. Wow.
Yeah, but we have 2 public meetings coming up, so we've still got a lot ahead of us. So, and several drafts. So. But we have tried to be very, very careful with his time.
Do we know when the next time Austin will be at a meeting?
He's supposed to be, where's that calendar?
I've got it up on screen here, so I think,
It's not clear.
I really think it's the public meetings. Maybe not, maybe not.
It's not clear. I don't think.
It's not.
Mm-mm.
I'm reading it as that December 6th meeting, but I think we could probably request it, if we want to touch base with them next time.
Yeah,
You mean on Zoom, like in person, rather than, because we are communicating with him. He's still, right? Lamar, you're communicating the finding,
yeah.
Okay.
Again, trying to keep it to a minimum. But I'll double check with him. That'll be another thing that I would look to confirm is his next plan to meet with us.
Yeah.
I'll let y'all know.
So I was a little off this number should be 4,680. Sorry, I calculated with the wrong hourly. I put in 190 instead of 195. So that actual October total is 4,680, not 4,560.
So that flows through to the rest of it, but it's
Another $120.
we generally know. Okay, unless there's any other business.
Well, Lamar, I just want to summarize exactly which of these we're going to look at. And I did find Nate, that one it's got Ann's comments on it, and maybe somebody you pass. I know it's just they're using their computer or something, but it's dated. It's the one 10/17/2022. And you'd like us to look at that? I mean, I've got that up. I think I can.
Well, I'm just saying, if
forward it.
you have concerns that your specific comments weren't
Oh, I
addressed,
see.
then
Okay,
you could look through that document and
Okay.
compare it to this document.
Okay.
And then if there's any, like, hey, why wasn't this addressed
Okay.
or whatever, then you could send those comments or those
Okay.
questions to
okay,
me or Lamar, probably just both of us, and we can ask Austin to maybe, answer those questions.
you'd like us to use this as a reference and to compare. Got it.
Yeah, because I felt like there was some concern at the beginning of the meeting, maybe,
Mhm.
some people's comments weren't addressed or whatever, so, or if I missed one, when I entered it in or something like that.
Okay.
So I can resend that in both Word, PDF, and then I'll also send a map of square footages, which will inform you on, shoot, I just closed which will inform you on sort of those dimensional standards that we talked about as far as what's the minimum lot size in R1 that should be buildable, things like that.
Yeah, and then there was the accessory too. And I noticed it used to be 3,000. You had to have a minimum 3,000 a lot to put an accessory building on it. An accessory means an additional to the primary, right?
Yeah,
And then
that
it went
should-
down to 2,000. That's little. It's 45 by 45. We did the square root
Yeah.
this afternoon
Nice.
and figured out the measurements.
Also on the additional accessory uses and structures, he added as conditional barns, sheds and outbuildings in the latest iteration
He was
We had
asked,
talked about that.
that you had
he
talked
was
about.
asked to do that.
So it's in here, but it wasn't highlighted. That's my.
Right. And we
Right.
talked about
Yeah.
future will be
We have
red
to
line
read
changes.
through.
Right. He
No.
hasn't notified us. Yeah.
We know we don't have a red line version. I'm going to ask for one. So we comments, questions and everything, be very judicious. We do not want to run up our legal bill. Make sure that what you're putting in is crucial because we do not want to use legal time if we can avoid it. All right. Anything else? Lisa, you've been traveling, so you really haven't had as much of a chance to look at all this as everybody else has. So we certainly want you to take your time and make your comments. So anything else from anyone?
You have on the 22nd of November, general public comments, no motions or votes. I won't be here for that. I'm not sure I can get to a computer, but I'll try to take mine and see if I can get in. But is that a work session, or is that just to go over what we've already done, or what do you
Well,
plan on doing on the 22nd?
This is mostly for listening to the general public, and let's say Lisa comes back, and has some comments. Hopefully she's already sent them to us, or the rest of us have thought of something or whatever, but don't worry about it, Mike. Yeah, this is primarily for the public to tell us their questions, concerns, changes, whatever. And again,
Okay,
Austin was very clear with us that we listen, but it's our ultimate decision. Just because a citizen makes a comment or whatever does not mean we have to do it. So,
okay.
So basically, we're going to show up here. We're not going to necessarily formally present it to the public, go through this whole thing. I mean, right, Mike's comment is right, like exactly what will we be doing?
gotcha. that I'm gonna double check and see if Austin's planning to attend that meeting.
Okay.
I would really like to see a red line version from Austin, as we've talked about, a list of the major changes, so that makes it easy to present. Even if he's not here, we'll have that for the public to see what's different.
Mhm.
And this thing's been posted, this thing's been advertised, this thing has been placed on the website. It's not the final, it's the draft. And so it's not that everybody won't have already had a chance to look at it, they will. But we're here to listen to their comments. So
Could I ask you a question? What
yes.
do you mean when you say red line? You use that.
red
term.
line is something that attorneys refer to when they send a document and it's red line to show you what they changed. And so I'm going to ask him for a red line version to show.
Oh, good. That's what yeah, that'd be helpful. Thanks.
Yes.
And so, I'm sorry, for the meeting on the 8th, we'll also have a regular planning commission meeting
Yes. Yes.
other than this, and potentially for the 22nd, or no?
Sure. I mean.
Yeah, I think there's gonna be some business to,
If we have applications, we're meeting and we want to be able to deal with our citizens' requests and applications. So for sure.
So we will need to distinguish when our one part of the meeting ends and the other part opens.
Right.
well, I was thinking that maybe public comment should come at the end or something at that meeting, just after everything's presented instead of before, because people won't really probably have read, the whole thing.
Right.
So
I agree.
if
I
there are
agree.
questions on what's presented,
Can you have a printout for the public?
I don't,
too?
that's not the public hearing. The public hearing would be on the 6th. That would be the actual hearing. So that would be the more structured,
Yeah. Comments on the A and the
But I think on the 8th, I think we're gonna have that CSU project on there. So that's gonna be quite the application there. So be prepared for that. So so that'll take up quite a bit of time on the 8th. So we should probably
That's no.
kind of have a work session or whatever presentation after that, just to get the CSU people in and out and stuff. So they have engineers and things that are going to be on the line. But so hopefully that will, and then there may be trying to think. I don't think all that will have to come back on the 22nd. It'll just go to the board after that, if planning commission approves all the CSU stuff. So I'm saying, I guess the 22nd I think we'll have a little more time or flexibility and not other stuff, I'm assuming.
If the stuff on the 8th with CSU is in depth and we're advertising that we want public comment on this at a certain time in the paper, we may want to have the CSU discussion second and have them come in a half hour into the meeting.
Okay.
Because there's nothing worse than someone sitting there for what they were advertised that they'd be hearing, and then we're here discussing ad nauseum some very in-depth stuff.
Okay.
What are they discussing? Or do we know that yet?
There's a proposal for a new pump station on Hondo
On Hondo?
in a residential area. Yes.
Oh, for water?
Mhm.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Okay, let's not get off on that. He'll present it when the time comes. One other thing to keep in mind is we've asked Jesse's group to potentially come back to us with some things that we may want to include in our code or addendum to the code. So that could also be something that would be presented one of those nights as well. So it could be busy, but we'll try to make it efficient, public, and it remains to be seen if any public shows up.
Mhm.
So keep in mind, Mike has mentioned he may not be able to be on the call. We will need a quorum to get business done, so be sure everybody's here for that meeting on the 8th.
And I'll try to get in. I'm just not sure where I'll be and whether I'll have computer access. So
Well, we appreciate your efforts, and I understand. Traveling is a challenge. All right, I think we've covered everything this evening. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate everyone's concerns about my daughter. We're still struggling with her health and pregnancy. The kids have gotten well. I have gotten well, but she's still not doing well. So.
Oh, I hope David mentioned that. I did. And I'm thinking about you and her.
Well, I appreciate everyone's concern and good thoughts. So y'all have a
Sorry.
great evening, and I call this meeting adjourned, Nate, at 9:02.
You're.
All right, thank you.